Good morning, Mayor, City Council members. For the record, I'm Joanne Hardesty, and today I'm here representing the Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. For the record, my name is Joanne Hardesty, and I am here to speak in support of the legislation in front of you. I'm speaking, you have my written testimony. I am also the president of the Portland chapter of the NAACP.
For those who know Joanne as the voice, as the conscience maker, as the microphone, I mean, she's literally a DJ around justice, who speaks out and who represents what has been over a decade of work to promote community participation in the level of responsibility for policing and for safety and justice. Whether she's standing with a microphone or she's engaged in a city council hearing, Joanne has been an advocate, she's been an activist, and she's been an agitator. There should be a lot of head nods about justice is not going to be done until it's done. And I'm here for the long haul.
It has been our experience in this community that African Americans are stopped 2.5 times more than their numbers in the population would indicate would be appropriate. They're searched twice as often, and they're half as likely to have guns, drugs, and other paraphernalia once that activity happens. And so we, as the Department of Justice, we said we have gone through and used all the internal mechanisms to try to hold the police accountable. I can tell you I've served on Blue Ribbon Task Force, I've served on committees, I've worked internally and externally trying to change the culture. And we decided in 2011 that clearly we were not going to be able to change the culture without the assistance of the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division.
What we have found is that the Portland Police Bureau does, in fact, engage in a pattern and practice of an excessive use of force, specifically in its dealings with people who suffer from mental illness or people who are experiencing a mental health crisis, and that this pattern or practice does violate the Constitution of the United States.
So like right now, if a Portland police officer shoots somebody in Portland, Portland police officers investigate whether or not that police officer acted appropriately. Well, are Portland police officers ever going to find Portland police officers did anything wrong? No, of course not. Right? And so, right, nor will the grand jury. If we're going to fix Portland police, there's a lot of entities that have to be fixed as well. It can't be just the police. We got to fix the district attorney. We've got to also fix the state legislature. And so I proposed 3 pieces of legislation in Salem. If you see a police stop someone, stop, observe. If you've got a cell phone that takes pictures, take a picture. Stand close enough that you can observe what's going on, but not so close that you can be accused of interfering. Just like my husband and I did the other day, we just leaned up against the wall, crossed our arms, and let it be known we weren't leaving until they were done.
There's a group called, there's a moms group that they have kids who've been suffering from being over-medicated in our mental health system, and they were organizing a march to Vancouver to join up with the moms in Vancouver. And they just happened to be marching down the street and singing and chanting, and they turn a corner onto Martin Luther King Boulevard, and they come face to face to a traffic stop. There are 4 African Americans sitting on the sidewalk. There's a brand new Dodge vehicle that one of the gentlemen was driving. They're sitting on a sidewalk. And so Joe Anybody was filming them. One of the young men said, well, you know, they wanted to search my car. And I said no. And what the police say to people who they believe have no power is, you can let me search you, it'll take 5 minutes. If not, we can tie you up for hours. And that's what they did to this man. They said, he said no. They said, okay, fine. They called out gang enforcement officers. There were a dozen police officers out doing a traffic stop on Martin Luther King and Shaver. And so, the 4 African Americans, they have them sitting on the sidewalk. They were tearing the car apart. I mean, they're looking, they know 4 black folks in a brand new vehicle driving down MLK, gotta have drugs, right? So they were convinced that they were gonna find something, so they didn't. What was so wonderful about this was not only Joe Anybody was filming the whole thing, was that people in the apartments noticed the traffic stop and they started coming out as well, and they came out with their cameras and their iPads and their cell phone cameras, and they stood on the sidewalk. Now normally when people encounter a traffic stop, the officers are very aggressive in making you move on. You move on or you're subject to arrest as well, right? There were way too many cameras for them to do that, right? And so it was so wonderful. They, in fact, were there for about 1 hour and 45 minutes. So I'm telling you stories, and these are stories of real people, real lives, real deaths that have taken place in our community. And if you listen to the public record of these deaths, what you hear is that the police did nothing wrong and everything was fine. But I'm here to question, to challenge you. We have, what they tell me is a very well-trained police force, and so if they're so well-trained, why do so many community members who are unarmed end up dead? So the impact on community members when police officers act in a way that is inappropriate, that's aggressive, that is damaging to community members, the impact is just not to the young person or person who was stopped. The impact is felt by the entire community, because the ripple effect of having a police force that you don't trust, a police force that comes out and brutalizes you rather than providing help, is what many people in our community experience.
Mr. Otis was wearing a hooded sweatshirt with the hood up on what was described as an uncharacteristically hot day. Mr. Otis did not seem to fit the car in that it seemed like one an older woman, not a younger man, would drive. Mr. Otis looks like he could be a gangster. Now I am asking you, the public, you be the jury. Those questions, do you believe if Keaton Otis had been a white 22-year-old man riding down the street on Halsey, that was the questions that the police would have had going through their mind? No. Do you think that if that was an old person, maybe, that the police would have had those questions going through their mind? No. What is it that made those 2 gang enforcement officers look at a young 22-year-old man and say, he looks like he could be a gangster? I rest my case.
And we came back together right after Aaron Campbell, so that was in 2010, so that was January of 2010 when Aaron Campbell was killed, and so we reconvened. We were together 11 years ago when Kendra James was shot and killed, another African-American woman shot and killed by Portland police. So we are a group that's come back together.
How the hell big is Portland? Why do we keep killing people?
Because we have poorly trained police officers and no system of accountability to hold them accountable.
What did you think about any proposals for training?
I think that we first have to do an assessment of what a good training officer is, and I think we have to look nationally to find out what is the model of good, effective community policing training officers. I think we end up rewarding bad officers by making them training officers here in Portland, and so far we haven't articulated what a good training officer is like. So there's always training that has to happen, but the big question is who does the training? Are they going to work with the community and have the community come in and train with police officers, or are they going to continue on, the police know best and we're going to train our own people?
Twist my arm. You're twisting my wrist. Look at what you're doing. You're twisting my wrist. Why? I'm ready to walk. Why have you got my wrist twisted? You're hurting me, man.
When I spoke at the City Council today, I said, for me, there are 3 questions. At the end of the day, at the end of the $26 million investment, will bad Portland police officers be able to be fired? That's question number one for me. Will the culture within the Portland Police Bureau have changed sufficiently that the public feels comfortable with that? 3, if a family is making a decision to call 911, are they going to think that you're going to come to help, or are they going to be worried that you're going to kill somebody, that you're coming to do a welfare check? I think we need a totally independent police review process. I think we need to remove oversight from the police department. And so I'm going to continue to work to try to make that happen. But I'm going to end my presentation with a story. Well, lo and behold, I was at another meeting with the mayor and the police chief, and they still hadn't given it to me. So I put pressure on the mayor. Mayor, I need this information. And I would think, as the police commissioner, you would want to know as well, right? So he leans over to the police chief and says, give her the information, right? And so these are the number of people who had multiple charges, right? Now, and because you can't read this document, I will tell you that the black number here says 180. The Asian number says 7. The Hispanic number says 7. The Native American number says 3. The white number said 31. When I met with this particular officer, he was shocked that 31 white people had been arrested in this process. Let me also share with you, he didn't think that many white people had been arrested. It really freaked him out. He didn't know what had gone wrong with this police action.
For the record, my name is Joanne Hardesty, and I am here today to speak in favor of the agreement between the Department of Justice, the Albino Ministerial Alliance Coalition, and the City of Portland. I'm also concerned that we keep hearing reports that a whole lot of changes have already happened. Don't worry about it, we fixed it, we put this in place, we put all these other policy decisions in place, and we fixed the problems within Portland Police Bureau. I want you to know I'm concerned that we are telling the public that somehow we're fixing problems before the settlement agreement has been filed with the federal court, and we don't have the community oversight mechanism in place to ensure that what we're being told has been fixed has truly been fixed.
I appreciate State Representative Luke Frederick and former State Representative Joanne Hardesty giving their perspective, because indeed there are state and federal issues involved as well as those at the local level. What I'm particularly pleased about in this agreement is that we have taken the time to iron through some issues, and Ellen Snack in the City Attorney's Office is highly commendable and should be lauded for working both with the Department of Justice and the court and also with the community, and I think that that's an unusual combination perhaps.
When I do Know Your Rights training with you, I tell them what their rights are, but I also tell them how they can go home alive, right? And there's a difference between the two, because if you're the only one that survives, then only one side of the story gets told, right? The police would like you to believe that if they stopped a young person on the street and said, "Can I talk to you?" That is what they call a mere conversation. But I've seen the mere conversations that, "Can I get your ID? Where are you going? Why are you in this neighborhood? Your backpack looks like somebody who had a gun in it. Can I check your backpack?" That is, even though there were 4,700 of those incidents in the last racial profiling report, those aren't broken down demographically, right? But we can guess who fits into that 4,700 people who were stopped for mere conversation. Militarized and now have tanks and weapons of mass destruction. Right. But I don't want you to get confused, because in communities of color, regardless
of the weapons that police have, they have been systematically abusing their power in communities of color. So let's not get confused. This isn't about what weapons they have. This is about a mindset. This is about a mindset that devalues black life. When did it become okay in the United States of America to try, convict, and execute on the street black people? When did that become okay? Not okay. Never. When did it become okay in the United States of America for police to just willy-nilly say, I was scared? It's not okay. And that's why I shot him 28 times.
Portland is not unique. When I say Portland is not unique, the problems that we're facing with our police departments are being faced all over the country. What's unique, however, is in Portland, we've been tracking it since 2001, and it's been consistent. If you're African American, you're twice as likely to be stopped. If you're stopped, you're twice as likely to be searched. And if you're searched, you're half as likely to have guns, drugs, or other paraphernalia on you. If you're Latino, it's 1.7 times as likely to be stopped, 2 times as likely to be searched, and once again, half as likely to have guns, drugs, and other paraphernalia on you. The problem that we have is that we have very poor definitions of accountability. We have a very poor definition of gang members. We have a very poor definition of who a criminal is in our community. I can tell you from the data that I've researched over the last 30 years that I'm hopeful for the first time in about a decade that we have people and new systems in place that we can have the real conversation. I can tell you how frustrating it is when you're a community member and you go to talk to the police chief or go talk to the police commissioner and they give you platitudes and they tell you how wonderful they're doing. Guess what? If we were really doing wonderful, we would not be having this conversation today. And so I am hopeful. Thank you. As I said to Chief O'Day before we started, I'm hopeful with the talk that I've heard from him and his new administration. But when you've been around for 30 years, you've heard good talk before. And so I'm waiting to see it. I want to see it in action. I want to see it in my community, how young people are treated. I want to make sure that we're not assuming that every African American male between 12 and 24 is a gang member, because they're not.
I want to also take a minute to recognize some elected officials who are in our audience. I want to recognize Senator Jackie Dingfelder, Senator Mike Dembro, Multnomah County Commissioner Judy Shiprack, City Commissioner Steve Novick, and Circuit Court Judge Adrian Nelson. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Joanne Hardesty in the middle is currently the president of the Portland chapter of the NAACP. She also has more than 30 years experience in organizing communities of color and low-income communities. She is also a former Oregon State representative who served 3 terms on Oregon's State's Judiciary Committee. Joanne is also the principal partner in Consult Hardesty, a firm that specializes in developing leadership in community-based organizations. She also has her own weekly public affairs program on cable radio.
Let me start by saying, as a 57-year-old African-American woman, I am thrilled that finally Black Lives Matter. In my lifetime in the country, in this country, in the United States of America, Black lives have not mattered. And so when people start saying, well, can't we get over Black Lives Matter? Don't all lives matter? I want to spend a little bit more time with Black Lives Matters. And I want to do that because, again, this is this moment in society. I believe once a generation, we get an aha moment. And so, I see that on the reading list, you have Michelle Alexander's book, as the first book for you to read. If you haven't read this book, it is an absolute must read. You got to read this book, because when this book came out in 2012, I thought, okay, this is it. The world will now know that we have a messed up criminal justice system, and this book is the start to fixing it. And guess what? The book came out. Michelle went around on a speaking tour. People filled up auditoriums. They asked questions. We brought Michelle Alexander to Portland. We had 1,200 people, standing room only. And so people were like, yeah, this makes sense. This makes sense. It connects the dots. But nothing happened. Still got the same criminal justice system, still have the same policing policies, still have the same activities going on in our communities. The ridiculous definition that all our law enforcement organizations came together, did a Multnomah County gang assessment report, and said we have 147 gangs operating in the city of Portland. I almost fell out of my chair laughing when I read that. It is not realistic, it's not possible. And so, to me, this is not an academic conversation. This is people's lives who have lost their lives. When the Internal Affairs investigates, we're told the police did nothing wrong in both of those cases. In both of those cases, the police officers are still collecting their salary, they're still on the force, they've been promoted. And so, as a community, this is not an academic conversation.
It's a beautiful day to be marching for justice, isn't it? It's a beautiful day to be here, to stand and be counted, right? We've got a little while before we start the program, but please take a moment to look around you and meet someone that you don't know. We want to see Portland represented today. Yeah. You look beautiful. I don't know if you can see what I see, but you look beautiful out here today. I see black and brown. I see white. I see young and old. I see our beloved community today. Thank you for standing up to be counted. What do we want? Justice. What do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. What do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. What do we want? Now. What do we want? Justice. Now.
I do believe that there is a role for absolutely everybody in this movement. I believe that there's a role for white people of goodwill. I believe that they should talk to the people closest to them. They should be engaging in conversations around race and racism. I think that is appropriate. I think that they can come and ask, how can I help? Organizations like mine, the NAACP, membership-based, so it's all about the members that we have. And so I'd like to tell you about the Portland campaign to end the new Jim Crow, but I'm out of time, so I'm sure someone will ask me a question about that when we get to question and answer period. I really appreciate your attention and thank you so much for being here tonight. It makes a difference when the 98% of the community that has no clue what's going on, when you show up, it makes a difference. So thank you for being here tonight.